Thank you for joining us. Welcome to this webinar from Skyterra Embrace. My name is Stephanie Lewis. I'm Admissions and Outreach. And today we have our registered dietitian, Elyssa Patillo, presenting how to reset your relationship with food. So Elyssa works with all of our students, and this is kind of a peek into our approach to our culinary education pillar. So Elyssa, take it away.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Stephanie. Well, first I want to start off by welcoming everyone. I really appreciate you taking the time to join. And my hope is that you learn a little bit about what I'm so passionate about. Yes, nutrition, and I love talking about how food is more than just food and how truly it can impact our lives in more ways than one. And really the focus of this being how to improve your relationship with food. So a little bit about myself. Again, as Stephanie mentioned, my name is Elyssa Patillo. I am the registered dietitian for Skyterra Embrace. My professional experience extends to working in an eating disorder treatment program, or for them, here local in Asheville, North Carolina, in the IOP, PHP, and residential settings, as well as a clinical dietitian at the largest hospital here in Western North Carolina. And through that, all of that professional experience plus my personal experience, I have found that I have a huge passion for just really that relationship with food that we can build, and that relationship with ourselves that we can build through food. And that's what brought me to Skyterra Embrace. So I'm excited to share a little bit more about that with you, and hope that you guys can take some little nuggets of information away with you today. So the roadmap that we're going to follow for this presentation, we're going to call it a little journey. So there are 7 pit stops along the way, and those are going to be like our high points, the key components of this presentation that we're going to hit. And there are also going to be some scenic opportunities along the way. So our first will be an opportunity to challenge your inner food critic. Our second will be talking about media's influence and some statistics. Third, the limited success for diets and why. Fourth, we'll be talking about health at every size, or the HAZE approach. Fifth will be a non-diet approach to nutrition. Sixth will be an opportunity to imagine a scenario. And then 7th will be just me providing you with tools to add to your toolbox when you go home, and then concluding with 5 simple challenges that you can incorporate today and moving forward. So first, we get to start off with an invitation to challenge your inner critic. Here, I like to pose the questions for you, and I want you to consider these and answer these right now, and continue to reflect on them as we progress through this webinar today. So the first question is, can you identify a food that you label as a no-no food, or a food that's off limits for you? Why is that food labeled as off limits? And can you come up with maybe what a downside could be to labeling that food as bad or off limits? And I'll give you a second to ponder those questions. Okay. So based on the responses, Stephanie, let's go back one more slide. Perfect. Thank you. So based on those responses that you came up with, I want to throw out some food for thought. And I want you to kind of cling to this throughout the remainder of the webinar too, because it will come back up later. So food for thought would be that our brain can't differentiate between chosen famine or forced famine, just as it can't differentiate between chosen restriction or forced restriction. So when we label a food as off limits, all we're doing is elevating the power of that food. When the example I like to use is Oreos. If we're on a diet and we say, no Oreos for me, and we're walking through the grocery store trying to be on our mission and get all of our groceries in our cart, and we pass the aisle with Oreos, those Oreos are going to be of higher value and higher reward to us than anything else on that aisle, because we have labeled them as off limits. And I like to talk about it from the standpoint of it's kind of our body's natural survival mechanism. So if we think about it in a moment of deprivation or starvation, our body is going to be driven towards foods that are rich in carbohydrates, hello, quick energy source, glucose, and rich in fats, hello, satiation. And that's our body's way of trying to take care of us. It's no fault of our own. It's just literally that, a survival mechanism. So hold tight to that food for thought, as well as those answers you came up with, and we'll kind of bring that full circle at the very end. So media's influence on obesity beliefs. When this slide comes up, I'm curious, I begin thinking about what are the thoughts that come to mind. And for most, I imagine seeing a headline like that, the world news with obesity crisis, is not at all surprising, because news and media today lead us to believe that that is our problem. Mainstream media is going to put that headline out there all the time. And I wouldn't begin to consider that or deny the fact that obesity is on the rise. Year after year, it does continue to rise. My question that I want to pose, though, becomes, is it our only problem? So if we look beyond obesity and we begin comparing obesity to eating disorders over the same 8-year time span, which is illustrated on the slide, we see that at the top in the tealish blue-green color, we've got the percentage increase in obesity over 8 years. So we're looking at from 1999 to 2000 through 2017 to 2018, we increased about 38.3% in the prevalence of obesity. Down below it in that yellowy green color, we've got the percentage increase of eating disorders over that same 8-year time span. And here, although the percent, if you see on the left, is going from just below 4% all the way to about 7.8%, statistically speaking, it's a 129% increase over those 8 years. So that's a pretty significant change. Although obesity is our prominent problem that we see in the news today, I do want us to consider the fact that we can't overlook how prevalent eating disorders are becoming. And I always question, is dieting and the push for weight loss, which ultimately leads to an increased prevalence of implementation of diets and caloric restrictions, could that be, one, leading to future weight gain, which we'll get into, increasing the obesity prevalence further, and 3, could it be leading to increased prevalence of eating disorders as well? So let's take this time to paint a picture for you. And the picture I like to paint is that we have almost 400,000 different plant species. And I am no plant expert by any means. With that being said, though, when I purchase plants and I bring them into my home to take care of, I consider the environment they thrive in, how much light they'll need, humidity, soil, water, all these things. And it's an individualized approach for all the different plant types that we have. And I would imagine many of you would take that same approach. Why is it, though, that with plants, we take an individualized approach for a species that is so much less complex than humans? And for humans, we take a one-size-fits-all approach. And you may be asking, what is that one-size-fits-all approach? It's diets. So we'll get into that. So some dieting statistics. The average adult will go on 126 diets in their lifetime. If you click, yep, over the course of 1 year, the average adult will go on at least 2 diets. And then the last bullet is that dieting predicts future weight gain and obesity, with studies showing that most dieters will regain more weight than was originally lost within 1 to 5 years. So the question is, could dieting be promoting exactly the opposite of what it's intended to achieve? What we just spoke about on the last slide really is a description of yo-yo dieting and weight cycling. So yo-yo dieting is the constant on and off pattern of following a diet, falling off a diet, following a diet, falling off a diet. And weight cycling is a term used to describe a pattern of weight loss followed by weight regain, and then weight loss followed by weight regain. So on this slide, I'm going to walk you guys through an example. It's technically going to cover 2 full years of dieting, and we're going to span from 2019 in January to 2021, January of 2021. So to start, we've got January 1st, 2019. This individual, we're going to say her name is Emily. So Emily decides, you know what, new year, new you, baby, I am going on a diet. And she begins the diet first day of the year. Over those first 6 months, she seems to be doing great. She's really committed to that diet. She's not falling off the bandwagon, as my parents always said. And now 6 months into the year, where are we at? We're in the middle of summer, right? And as humans, we crave connection with others. So we've got pool parties, we've got lake parties, we have beach parties, all these opportunities to connect with other people. And we don't want to miss out. So Emily, in this example, goes, mingles with her friends, has a blast, and she realizes, oh my gosh, this feels so good to finally have some freedom without the constraints of those diets. So she says, I'm just going to break the diet now and I'm going to jump back on Monday. Well, Monday rolls around and Emily says, oh my gosh, no, that felt so good. Next week. And then it's the next week and the next week. So over the subsequent 6 months, Emily regains 25 pounds that were lost, and she adds 3 more. So we started 2019. We're going to say Emily was 175. The start of 2020, she's now 178. Okay. So we've increased only 3 pounds. Not a big deal. So January 1st, 2020, Emily starts the diet again. Same thing, new year, new you, ready to go on the diet. We hit 6 months in, summer rolls around. We've got opportunities to really engage with our community. So she has lost from January 1st, 2020 through the 6 month time period, she's lost 25 pounds again. Well, she falls off that diet, can't seem to get back on it. And then the start of 2021, by that start, she's regained 25 pounds and added 3 more. So now, January 1st, 2021, Emily is at a weight of 181. And if we compare back to 2019, where she first started, we've increased what's called our set point weight by 6 pounds. And I don't know about you, but I haven't found very many people that only have dieted in their lifetime for 2 years. Most have dieted year after year after year after year. And so this is really just a simple way to illustrate the impact of yo-yo dieting and weight cycling on our long-term health and wellness, and how repeated patterns of ongoing diets can lead to more weight gain in the long term. So now the question becomes, why the limited success? So there are 2 key points here that I like to hit on. First being hormones. We've got many hormones involved in the regulation of our hunger, and we're going to identify 2 in this webinar. So when we go on a diet or we're on any kind of restrictive eating pattern, I'm sure many people could agree or, resonate with this. We often feel a heightened sense of hunger. And that heightened sense of hunger is coming from our hormone ghrelin. And ghrelin is a hormone that is primarily secreted in our stomach lining. It's the hunger hormone, or the hormone that tells our body we're hungry. And right before a meal, we expect that our ghrelin levels will be at their peak because we're sitting down, we're about to eat a meal, and we're really, really hungry. On the flip side, we've got our satiety hormone, and it's called leptin. So leptin is primarily secreted in our fat cells. And leptin is that hormone that is telling our body we're full and we're satiated. So if we think about after a meal, After we've been fed, we've been fueled, and we're feeling full and satisfied, leptin is going to be at its peak. So these two hormones work opposite of each other. Ghrelin is high before meals, leptin is low before meals. And following a meal, they just flip-flop. Now ghrelin is low and leptin is high. With diets, what happens is we revert from following our kind of the knowledge within us and the ability to identify hunger and satiety cues. We kind of shove that under the rug, and now we're paying attention to only these diet rules, these diet patterns. And that can inhibit our relationship with our body, which ultimately inhibits our relationship with food, and it disrupts those hormone levels. The example that I like to give our students at Skyterra Embrace is if they have let's say they have a roommate in college and they have class at 8 a.m. together. Well, if our student is going over there knocking on her roommate's door and she's like, come on, we got to get to class, after 15 minutes, I'm sure, of her roommate saying, yeah, I'm coming, and then no action to follow suit with that, this individual would probably stop knocking on the door, because it would be seen as a waste of time and a waste of energy. Well, that's the same thing with these hunger hormones. So ghrelin, if ghrelin is constantly being produced in our body to tell ourselves, hey, we're hungry, and it's that little knock, hey, I'm hungry, and we're saying, yes, I hear you, and we're never following up with the action of providing food, eventually that hunger hormone stops being produced, because not necessarily stops being produced, but yes, it's our body's way of conserving energy to use it in other manners, because it's realizing I don't have enough energy to do everything. And so that can create that dysregulation of hunger hormones that we see so often. The second point is the decrease in total daily energy expenditure. So that sounds kind of confusing and complicated, and I'm going to sum it up in a few simple words, I feel like. So total daily energy expenditure is the amount of energy our body utilizes on a daily basis, just to, get us through the day. And on the right side of the screen, it's made up of those four components. So we have our basal metabolic rate, which is BMR, often referred to as resting metabolic rate, or RMR sometimes. And that makes up the majority of our total daily energy expenditure. BMR or RMR, it is essentially the amount of energy our body needs to keep our body living and sustaining function of normal organs, or of our vital organs, at rest. So at a minimum, that is what we need to survive. And then we've got thermic effective food right above it. Thermic effective food is the amount of energy required to digest, absorb, and utilize the nutrients we consume through food. Then we've got exercise. So if we think about participating in a Zumba class, or going on a hike, playing pickleball, any of that intentional movement that's set aside throughout our day gets lumped into exercise, the amount of energy needed to be able to allow us to participate in that movement. And then finally, at the very top, we've got what is called NEAT, our non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And that, to simplify, is really the amount of energy our body needs to engage in activities of daily living. If we think about walking into the grocery store, walking up the stairs when we get home, folding our laundry, doing all these things throughout the day, that movement makes up that large portion called our NEAT. Well, as we lose weight, or as we're on restrictive eating patterns, let's say restrictive eating patterns to start, our body, if not getting enough food, will slow things down and start burning through energy at a slower rate, which can impact our basal metabolic rate. And as we lose weight, a lot of times we're losing muscle mass, which also greatly impacts our basal metabolic rate. And all of that together is going to impact our total daily energy expenditure, because it's taking less energy to move a body at a lower weight. And so as we progress through this webinar, we're going to talk about why that may not be a sustainable option for all of us. Perfect. So as we get into this, we're going to talk about what the alternative would be. So if diets aren't working and the majority of people are regaining the weight that they lost within 1 to 5 years, what's the alternative? And the approach that we take at Skyterra Embrace, and the approach that I advocate for as a dietitian, is one that involves a health at every size approach, a non-diet approach, and then incorporates elements of intuitive eating and mindful eating. So to start, we'll talk about health at every size. So health at every size is a newer model. It's essentially a paradigm shift that's occurring that recognizes that health can be achieved while residing in bodies of all different shapes, sizes, and abilities. It celebrates body diversity. It challenges scientific and cultural norms. An example being that weight is not equivalent to health. A weight or a number on a scale does not indicate that we're a healthy individual, that there's so much more that goes into that. It advocates for finding joy in movement. So thinking about, if you absolutely hate CrossFit comes to mind. If you absolutely hate CrossFit, we're going to be less apt to engage in a form of movement that makes our body, one, maybe it makes your body feel broken down. Maybe it's so hard, it takes you out of the ability to be present during that movement. So if we're less apt to be engaged in that because we don't like it, what's our alternative? And our alternative is, if we really enjoy swimming, let's participate in swimming. If we really enjoy walking, let's participate in walking. But any way to increase the physical activity, the movement that we're getting throughout the day in a way that brings joy and is life-giving to us, as opposed to, I think, of life-depriving. It also encourages eating in a flexible and attuned manner. So that's where we're going to get into the values of like honoring pleasure and hunger, satiety, and our appetite. So all of that is like the overarching piece that we're going to cover, and then we'll get into the non-diet approach, the intuitive eating, and the mindful eating. Perfect. So this image is used to really illustrate the difference between a diet mentality or diet mindset and a non-diet mindset. And I'm going to kind of go from left side of the screen to the right side of the screen. So in a diet mindset, we look at health is equivalent to weight, or health is equal to size. And in a non-diet mindset, we think of health as being really all encompassing. It looks at mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, physical health, so much more. And we're looking at more than just a number on a scale. We might be bringing in like biomarkers, looking at labs, looking at blood pressure, doing all those things that are going to be more indicative of our health too than just a number on a scale. And then we've got diet mindset might say, eat less, move more. I don't know about you guys, but I can raise my hand. I've heard that many times before. On the flip side, non-diet mindset is really encouraging us to eat in a nourishing way, to move in a way that feels good and feels joyful for our body, as opposed to the focus being eat less, move more. The diet mindset is more of this black and white thinking, this all or nothing thinking. And that ties in the example we used at the very beginning, where I challenged you guys or gave you the opportunity to challenge your inner critic. Labeling a food as a no-no food or an off-limits food is really falling into that all or nothing, that black and white mindset. If we look at a non-diet mindset, though, we've got the viewpoint of all foods are welcome and all foods fit. And I hold true and hold strong to that. And the example I give our students frequently is that my grandmother growing up, she always had little oatmeal cream pies, the ones that come in the little clear wrapper. And growing up, I ate them every time I was at her house. Well, now she's no longer with us. And if I was in the diet mindset, I could easily say, I can't eat those. I can't eat those. Those are bad foods. But looking at it from the viewpoint of all foods are welcome and all foods can fit allows me the opportunity now to say, on the anniversary of her passing every year, to say, is that a food I want to incorporate? And is it an opportunity for me to share in remembrance of her? And so it creates freedom around some of these foods that so many times can have these negative connotations associated with them. And really what I think about is if I didn't view those foods as welcome and the opportunity for all foods to fit, on that day when, that's a hard day, emotion is present. And if I knew and I could attach those little oatmeal cream pies to that day with her, I would probably be more inclined to eat a whole box of them as opposed to just one of them. And there's, the ability to be more present during that eating experience. Second to last on the left side now, we're at desire to change body size. So often in the diet mindset, we're thinking of weight loss is our goal, weight is our goal. And everything we're doing, how we're eating, how we're moving is for the focus of weight or weight loss, change in body composition. From a non-diet mindset, we're looking at it instead of weight being our goal, we're looking at health promoting behaviors. So health promoting behaviors, examples of that would be eating 3 meals a day for consistent flow of energy, increased mood, regulation, helping with blood sugar stabilization and regulation. So 3 meals a day might be an example of that. Sleeping, getting at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night, drinking enough water, moving our body daily. All of these things that are going to impact our health in more ways than just a number on a scale. So it's looking at it from a broader lens as opposed to narrowing it into just one piece. And then lastly, our diet mindset looks at extrinsic focuses or an external focus being calories, points, meal timings. If we're thinking about something like intermittent fasting, where there's only a certain window of time that we could consume food within. So it's taking the focus off of ourselves and our internal knowledge and that relationship, and it's putting our focus now on these external factors. Our non-diet mindset is focused internally on identifying hunger, fullness, desire, pleasure, and really I think of it as an opportunity to build attunement and a relationship with our body so that we can begin to establish trust with it, knowing that it knows more about us and what we need than any diet ever will. So now we are at the point where we get to compare mindful eating and intuitive eating. And this is coming into play because if we're taking a non-diet approach, as we just described on the last slide, there are pieces, mindful eating and intuitive eating, which are proven to help kind of repair a relationship with food and allow us to rebuild that trust with ourselves so that we can, identify those hunger cues, identify satiety cues. We can eat when we're hungry, we can stop when we're full, and we can kind of eat the food we need and we want in that moment and move on with our day rather than being so hyper-focused on it. So for mindful eating is a practice of bringing more awareness and attention to the eating experience. So it's engaging our senses while we're eating. So our sight, our smell, the sound, all of those things, paying attention to what's moving us to eat. And one of the things that I like to utilize as a tool for our students is a HALT acronym. So HALT. So H is hungry, A is angry, L is lonely, and T is tired. So if we walk through that acronym in a moment where we're being driven towards eating, if we can walk through the acronym, are we hungry? Okay, if we're hungry, yes, we need to eat. If we're at the point in which we're responding to angry, lonely, or tired, what else can we do to kind of take care of to nurture that emotion that we're experiencing without going towards food? And so that's something that I might walk our students through for the mindful eating opportunities, mindful eating experience, how to bring attention and awareness to that. It's paying attention to our fullness levels during meals. And we're going to get into a tool that I utilize with our students to begin identifying that. Because if you've been on a diet or a restrictive pattern for quite some time, most likely, especially if you've gone from, which is the pattern I see most frequently with our students at Skyterra Embrace, we're led to believe we have to restrict intake. So we don't eat all day, and then we get to dinner and a large portion of dinner gets consumed. And then it kind of leads into this ongoing grazing or this ongoing binging experience that most describe. And so when they come to Skyterra Embrace, it's like, I don't even know how to identify when I'm hungry. That feels weird. And when I'm full, I don't know if I've felt fullness in quite some time. So we're implementing tools to be able to guide them in rebuilding that relationship so that they can begin identifying those cues. They're noticing emotion. So that ties in, again, that HALT acronym that I use with them so many times, identifying what they're experiencing in that moment that's leading them towards or moving them to want to eat. And then limiting outside distractions. So that's increasing our ability to be fully present and aware in that eating experience. That's a lot. So let's flip to the intuitive eating side. So intuitive eating is more of like, it's like a even more all-encompassing piece, because it involves so much of the mindful eating piece, and it incorporates 10 principles, which I'm not going to hit on right now because it would be a lot. And I encourage you to do your research on it because it's powerful. And really, the prime one is this first bullet under our intuitive eating circle, and it's to get rid of or challenge the diet mentality. And the diet mentality is a couple slides back, or a slide back, when we talked about the non-diet approach versus the diet approach, or the diet mentality. It's challenging that. I think of it when we sit down to eat a slice of cake with a friend for her birthday. Some thoughts might come to mind, some emotion, some judgment. And how can we reframe? Maybe we're looking at the cake and we're telling ourselves, I can't have that. That's a bad food. It's too high in sugar. That food will make me blank, gain weight. And it's reframing that. Maybe the example being, now we're looking at the food, we're identifying the judgmental thoughts that are coming up, and we're telling ourselves this food provides carbohydrates and fats, 2 of which are macronutrients my body needs. So it's reframing it to allow more grace and opportunity for freedom within that eating experience. Giving ourselves permission to enjoy food. I love to do this when I've had someone that I'm working with that's constantly been tracking food, counting calories, doing all these things. I like to, in our transition away from those external focus of calories, points, whatever that may be, I give them, sometimes they need the freedom from me to verbalize that they have the freedom to go out to dinner and enjoy a meal. And so what I may request is that they take the opportunity to rank their joy with that meal or that snack. And so they may take on a scale of 1 to 5, which is typically what I give them. 1 to 5, 1 being absolutely no joy, 5 being the most joy you've ever experienced. Where can they rank that eating experience? And that's a way for them to now tap into that internal piece that we have, as opposed to being so caught up in the calories and the points, etc. Choose foods that are satisfying. If you're hungry for, what's an example? If you're hungry for dark chocolate, choose the dark chocolate and find a way to incorporate it in a way that is satisfying and nourishing. And the thought that comes to mind is we make hike bites here, and hike bites are made with dates and cashews and nut butters and oats, and they have dark chocolate in them. So it's providing our body with protein, it's providing our body with fats, it's providing our body with carbohydrates, and it's satisfying our desire for that dark chocolate. What would not be satisfying would be, I want dark chocolate and I'm not going to have it because it's off limits. I'm going to eat carrots instead. We're only going to be more driven towards the dark chocolate eventually. And so finding a way to incorporate those foods that we want, we have a desire for in that moment so that they are more satiating, more satisfying, and we can just move on from that and no longer hyper focus on it. Taking the moral value away from food. So sometimes diet culture can get wrapped up in us being like a good person versus a bad person, depending on the food that we're eating. And so intuitive eating and the principles of it really challenge us to fight against that pressure, because there is nothing wrong with the food that we're choosing to eat, especially if we're tapping into those pleasure and reward cravings, taste, hunger, satiety, all those inner cues that our body is giving us. And lastly is the ability to honor hunger cues. So when we have students come to embrace the meal plan, the meal pattern structure that we follow throughout the day is just 3 community meals a day. And we incorporate the opportunity of 2 snacks. And so with that, it is in an effort to help them regulate those hunger cues that they maybe weren't experiencing before. And so it gives them the opportunity of like a consistent flow of energy throughout the day so that we can begin to see that those hormones are regulating. And it's so cool because we also get to see them be like, Elyssa, I felt hunger for the first time this morning when I woke up. And it's like, it's an opportunity to celebrate because it again is increasing the awareness with one's body. So now we get to do, this is just fun. So I hope you guys take the opportunity to just sit back, relax, and listen. So this is going to be a scenario that I'm going to walk us through, and it's going to tie in that first thing that we had in the presentation, which was the opportunity to challenge your inner critic. Okay. So in this scenario, we've got Sally. Sally has a group of 6 friends, and they have they love going to the movies. It's their time to really engage with each other, to share this experience, and they love the new releases. So about once a month, they all get together and they go to the movie theater. Well, this time, Sally is on a diet and she weighs the option of, do I go? Do I not go? I really want to go, and I'm not going to eat the popcorn. So instead of not eating anything, she decides, I'm going to sneak some apple slices into my bag and I'm going to get a water. So she goes to the movies with her friends, and the whole time, all she can think about is popcorn. They're sitting there trying to watch the movie. She cannot even focus or relax. All she can smell, like I can just smell it, is the buttery popcorn. And all she can hear is the crunching of it beside her. And so she leaves the movie theater with her friends and she realizes, man, that just was not so much of an enjoyable experience for me. So the next movie theater option comes around, and Sally, she goes and she has to weigh the option of, do I do this again and allow it to be an experience that's not all too enjoyable for me? Or do I get the popcorn? So in preparation for this movie theater experience, Sally decides, I'm going to work out really hard that morning, and I'm not going to eat breakfast, and I'm just going to have a salad for lunch, all to allow for the room to have popcorn. Yeah, all to allow for the room for her to have popcorn during the movie. So she gets the movies, she buys her popcorn, she's so excited. She decided, since I didn't have breakfast, I just had a salad and I worked out today, I'm gonna go for the large popcorn because I'm pretty hungry. And she thought she could space it out. She thinks she can space it out throughout the whole movie. Well, before the previews even end, Sally has realized her hand is hitting the bottom of that popcorn bucket. And all she can feel is an overwhelming sense of guilt and disgust because she knows how fast she ate that popcorn, and because of the society we live in and the fact that she was on this restrictive diet, it's leading her to have a lot of judgmental thoughts and experience a lot of emotion around that choice. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like that resonates for so many people, whether it's popcorn or it's not. Being on a restrictive eating, engaging in a restrictive eating pattern, being on a diet, as was observed in this scenario, it can take away from our ability to engage with the community that surrounds us. So in the beginning, when Sally went to the movies with the apples, she left and she was not able to focus. She wasn't able to engage throughout that experience because she was so focused on the popcorn, the sound, the smell around her. And I think that's, the same thing that happens for so many of us. I'm sure many of you you've been on a diet maybe before, gone to a friend's birthday party and said, I can't have the cake, I can't have the cake. And after so many times of that, all we begin to think about is the cake, and it's like our mouth is watering. And so that right there is an example and an opportunity to really apply this to real life. And so you may be asking, well, what's the alternative? Like, what's the solution to that makes this a better experience? So let's get into that. And it's viewing food from a lens of inclusivity and equality. So it's taking, on the left side of the screen, it's taking our focus from looking at fruits and veggies and whole foods as more valuable and more healthy than our fun foods, our highly palatable foods. And it's shifting that focus to now we're looking at it from the lens, as I mentioned a couple slides back, from that non-diet approach. We're looking at it from the lens of all foods are welcome, all foods can fit, and we're trying to view them as equal within our diet. Not that we're going to eat cake every single day or we're going to eat ice cream every single night. It's also recognizing, though, that we have the freedom to choose if we want to eat and engage in eating those foods, when the desire for them presents itself. So it's opening up the opportunity for that freedom and the opportunity to have a slice of cake and move on, to have a serving of ice cream and be completely satisfied and move on with our day. And the other is on the right side of the screen. And this is where we can look at food with 3 different roles. So if we look at food from the role of fuel, the example that comes to mind for me is athletes. So we think of carbohydrates, and when our body eats carbohydrates, we break it down into glucose and we use it for energy. So that's fuel, okay? An example of it. Then we've got function. I think about fiber. Eating fiber in our diet can help with blood sugar regulation. It can help with bowel regularity. And that's fiber's role as function. And then lastly, we've got fun. So if we're looking at food from the role of fun, that's eating cake with our friends on their birthday, eating popcorn at the movies. Well, in most instances on a diet, I don't know that I found one that doesn't do this yet, we eliminate the fun. So what happens is we go from a stable 3-legged stool that has all 3 roles, fuel, function, and fun. Now we eliminate one of those legs. So we've got 2 legs to our stool. We've got fuel and function. Well, I haven't found a stool yet that is very stable on 2 legs. And if you have, please let me know. But I think this is the same for all instances of eating patterns. If we eliminate any one of these roles, we're going to end up with a fairly unstable foundation. And so the reason this is important is because if we can begin to view food from an inclusive lens, viewing food from that all foods are welcome, all foods can fit, we allow the opportunity now to look at food and incorporate it from the standpoint of its fuel, its function, and its fun without eliminating one of those roles altogether. Perfect. So why is this vital for our population? And this is the population we serve at Skyterra Embrace. And it's vital because what we know through literature is that there is a large correlation between disordered eating behaviors and those individuals that fall into overweight and obese BMI categories. There's also increased rates of co-occurrence between disordered eating behaviors or eating disorders and mental health challenges, which are illustrated on the right side of the screen. So we've got the co-occurrence between disordered eating behaviors or eating disorders with these mental health co-occurring conditions. So what's listed in the study, which is creating this image, is anxiety, depression, OCD, substance use. And so what they found is that anorexia nervosa has a co-occurrence prevalence rate of about 50%. Bulimia nervosa has the co-occurrence rate of about, it was like 85%. And then with binge eating disorder, we're at about 75%. So the prevalence of OCD, anxiety, substance use co-occurring with these eating disorders and beyond eating disorders, disordered eating behaviors is extremely high. And this is why we take the approach that we do at Skyterra Embrace. And it really is why I advocate for this approach to nutrition for everyone that I work with. So yay, now we get to sum it all up and we get to apply this to your home life. And you can take these tools home with you today. We're going to give you 4 tools that are practical and easy to use, and you can start using them as soon as this webinar ends. First is the Skyterra plate. So this is a tool we use for our students at Skyterra Embrace. And we use it because it gives them a framework to work off of, some guidance through the creation of their meals, still allowing them the opportunity to tap into those desires for specific foods. Maybe it's, you know, for vegetables, they want broccoli instead of salad or carrots, whatever that may be for them. But it does allow them the opportunity for that creative side, and also to still work towards building a nourishing plate. Without this tool, I believe it would be very challenging for our students to come into Skyterra Embrace and for us to take the non-diet approach that we do, and to say like, hey, we just want you to eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full. For most of them that have been engaging in restrictive patterns for quite some time, it would be a very challenging task to ask them to do that. And so this is a tool that's going to help simplify that process for them, teach them how to eat meals that are balanced, and allow them the opportunity to tap into what their body's telling them they want to eat. So the second is a nutrition awareness journal. This is a tool that I use for our students when they first get to us. I encourage them to fill it out for 1 week. So from the first time they meet with me until the second time. And from there, we kind of work together on how useful this tool is, setting goals around it. It creates space for, as you guys can see, documenting what's consumed at each meal and snack. And the little white boxes that say hungry before and full after are an open space for them to jot down their hunger and fullness levels, which we're going to get into on the next slide. But you see a little brief snippet of it at the bottom. There are 2 handouts that we utilize for this. So yeah, we can go to the next. Thanks, Stephanie. So the hunger and fullness scale, what they're using, and this is what they're using in conjunction with that piece that you saw on the previous slide. So the hunger and fullness scale is a way for us to track our hunger and our fullness, as it says. A 1 is what we call primal hunger. That is like our body is so deprived of energy. We are starving and all we can think about is food. And the minute we see it, we are going to eat all that we can find. Again, that ties in that survival mechanism. It's our body's way of taking care of us. If that's happening, most likely we're going to end up on the complete opposite end of this hunger and fullness scale. And we're going to end at a 10, which is going to be that painful overfull experience, which we want to stay out of these 2 extremes. So the goal I work with our students on is beginning to identify hunger and begin eating between a 3 and a 4, and then beginning to identify fullness and stopping our eating anywhere between a 6 and a 7, sometimes an 8. And so what they're doing is they're utilizing this hunger and fullness scale, and they're picking out their number. And I encourage 2 to 3 checkpoints, depending on the individual. So we may do a checkpoint before a meal. Where are we at on our scale? We might do a checkpoint halfway through our meal. Again, where are we at on our scale? And then at the end of our meal, identifying where we're at. And they're able to log that into their nutrition awareness journal that was on the prior slide. They bring it to a session with me. And then over weeks of time, we're able to sit together and process how much progress they have achieved through being able to identify how hungry they are. And for many, they may come in and it's like, I'm never hungry. And then after a couple weeks of doing this and eating 3 meals at consistent times every day at Skyterra Embrace, they're now like, wow, Elyssa, I'm identifying my hunger at, a 3 or a 4. And so it's a tool to be able to use and to gauge progress with. So I 100% encourage using it at home. All right, and lastly, we've got our mindful eating plate. So this ties in that Venn diagram that we saw a couple slides back, comparing mindful eating to intuitive eating. Mindful eating is, one, research supports it. It leads towards more nutrient-rich options. It leads towards more satisfaction, awareness, and presence during the eating experience. And I always advocate for the fact that we can involve or participate in some element of mindfulness practice, whether we have 30 seconds before a meal or whether we have 60 minutes for a meal. If we have 60 minutes, we may involve mindfulness throughout the entire preparation and the cooking process of that meal, as well as the consumption of it. If we only have 30 seconds, we're in a hurry, we've got to get to class, we've got to get to work, whatever that is, we may say, I don't have time to be fully present, and I'm going to take 3 deep breaths and say 1 word of gratitude before I participate in the consumption of this meal. And that is a way to incorporate mindfulness. This plate, though, is an exercise that I like to walk our students through. And we start with, so we may have a snack or we may have a meal, and we will start with observe. So it's noticing their body. How are they feeling? Are they stressed? Are they hungry, etc. Next, it's in the moment. So being fully present. Are there distractions that are present? Can we eliminate them? The thing that comes to mind is the TV. And then we move into non-judgment. So back to the cake example I provided before, are we sitting down to eat a meal or a snack and we're having all these judgmental thoughts that are arising? How can we reframe that and speak kindly and compassionately to ourselves during that opportunity? From there, we're moving into eating the meal and taking bites of it. We're paying attention to the taste, the texture, the smell, all these components that bring awareness to what we're eating. And then lastly, being aware. So identifying, are we tasting our food or are we mindlessly munching? If we're mindlessly munching, it typically involves scrolling on our phone while we're eating a meal, or sticking our hands directly in a bag and eating chips out of them, etc. So really capitalizing on and focusing on that experience of tasting the food that we're eating. And lastly, these are your final challenges to bring it all full circle. So you've got 5 challenges. 1 is, if diets haven't worked in the past, you're not alone. Take the pledge today and stop dieting. Get out of that dieting hamster wheel and start caring for your body in a way that is life-giving as opposed to life-depriving. 2, start eating at least 3 meals a day and try utilizing the Skyterra plate as your guide. 3, if weight loss is your focus, try shifting your focus instead towards health-promoting behaviors. Like we talked about before, drinking enough water, getting enough sleep, eating enough meals, or 3 meals, maybe some snacks throughout the day. Enjoy movement that feels good for your body, swimming, walking, hiking, pickleball, all those things. And do some reading and some research. We believe that knowledge is power. So if you have any questions, it looks like we've got a couple maybe in the chat that we might want to address. And the contact information for myself and Stephanie are in these slides for you to see. And upcoming, we have another webinar coming in January, which will be facilitated by our executive director, Greg Osler, and then our program director, Emma Mooney. And they're going to talk about your challenge, your choice. It will be January 6th at the same time, noon, right over lunch.
Elyssa, I am having trouble accessing the chat. So if you can see those questions.
Okay, let's see. I can't even move my mouse.
I got it here. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, you can. I will send you the slides and the recording of this very meeting. Thanks, Nancy. I'll get that out to you all. Yeah, and then the other one just says, thank you, Elyssa. That's great.
Oh, perfect. Well, I'm so thankful for you guys. I really appreciate you taking the time to attend and to listen. I hope that you were able to take away some little nuggets of information that you can apply to your life moving forward, because truly I feel there is so much value and so much power in looking at food from an all-inclusive lens and allowing ourselves to have the freedom to choose the foods we want to eat. So thank you so much.
Thank you all for joining us. We hope to see you on the next one. Have a great one.